Okay, so let's talk about careers in animation. And obviously, this is a very important thing. You've been doing this course for some time now, and it all needs to lead somewhere. And obviously, what you want to get out of it is to get a job or to find a working life using your skills that is interesting and satisfying. Now, obviously, animation has come along a huge distance in the last 20 or 30 years. When I started out doing it, there were very few companies you can go and work for, and now there are many. This, by the way, this image here of the women spinning is taken from the Charge of the Light Brigade. I think it's a nice image. Sometimes working in a Soho animation studio can feel a little bit like this. But what do we need to get a job? So I think there are five major ingredients. One is talent, the second is opportunity, the third is timing, the fourth is luck, and the fifth, of course, is persistence or stick to itness, as you might say. We'll come back to those in a bit, but first of all, let's begin with talent. And the way that people know that you're talented is by looking at your reel. That's why this course focuses so heavily on building a demo reel. And this is a reel by Tracy Chung, who was one of my students at Escape. And she did an excellent reel, which landed her a job. And she has a flourishing career now in the animation business. And your reel must be online. It is absolutely vital. There's no use having a reel that sits on your computer. You've got to be online. You've got to be easy to find. And that means YouTube or Vimeo, or ideally both. And actually, in a perfect world, you should really have your own blog and website. And not even in a perfect world, you must have that, because it's very, very important that you have your own artistic, creative space online where you do your own work and you show what you can do. And it's always a work in progress. You will find that your demo reel is constantly being revised, constantly updated. But here's an example of my old animation demo reel, which this is the old version of my website. And here's my latest version, Alex Williams Animation. And what I like about my new one is that I can update the content myself. So it's really more like a blog. And I think actually a blog is fine. And blogging is not that difficult these days. And the great thing about it is its incredible flexibility. And you can also edit the blogs you've already done and really just use it, not so much as a blog as in the sense of, today I had cornflakes and I saw this amazing thing and here's some pictures of my family, but a blog in the sense of here's my animation reel, here's some drawings that I did, or here's some artwork, here's some snapshots of some digital artwork, to show that you can cut the mustard in the workplace. That's what it's really all about. Technical skills, you're going to need Maya, which you've been learning on the course. There's other software. Here's a sort of list of other things that you might think about learning. Really, everyone knows Photoshop now. You should have the basics of Photoshop. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and if you don't have it, you should get it. If you can't afford it, download the GIMP. That's GIMP. It's free. And it works very much like Photoshop. It basically does all the same things, but the buttons are in slightly different places. It's also very good to have a mastery of either Final Cut or Premiere, two pieces of editing software. You've been using one or the other of those to do your demo reel, I'm sure. If you're interested in getting into post-production a bit more, After Effects is an incredibly useful piece of software. Final Draft is the piece of software you want if you're interested in writing. For writing scripts, Final Draft is the best software available. And Flash, something that's not taught on this course, but a very powerful tool for doing 2D animation. It's also good to develop your basic artistic skills. I highly recommend going to life drawing classes, and especially gesture drawing, doing very, very quick sketches of the body. It really helps you to create good animation thumbnails. Some kind of color theory is also really useful. These are what we're really talking about here, sort of general art school principles. An art foundation course or something like that will will teach you this stuff. But some kind of idea of color theory, also a basic understanding of perspective, incredibly useful in terms of doing storyboards and so on. And Also, storyboarding is a tremendously useful skill. These are taken from Dumbo by the great Bill Peet. Um, Storyboarding also increasingly relies less on actual drawing skills because much increasingly storyboard artists tend to use software which is being developed now incredibly rapidly, which allows you to think more in terms of 3D animation and moving objects around than in being a great draftsman. It's much less important now to be a great draftsman than it used to be in terms of storyboarding. So a lot of it's in a way it's been de-skilled, but it makes it more accessible to everyone. Entry-level jobs. Now, in visual effects, tracking and roto are the most common things that you go into. This course will not prepare you for those. That's the sort of thing you might learn at a place like, say, Escape Studios. We're really preparing you to go in as a junior animator. Now, that means you've got to be good. And this is me on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I started out as an in-betweener, and I was literally putting the in-between drawings in between other drawings on the film, and those jobs don't exist anymore. Which means you have to go in as a junior animator, and you have to be good. So you almost have to go into the industry fully formed now. And it is competitive. Animation is one of the more competitive jobs. And that's why we focus really on making sure that your reel is awesome and that it is free of mistakes. Now, how do you hear about jobs? Well, you're going to hear it on the grapevine. People will talk about it down at the pub. There's LinkedIn. There's various film groups you can join on LinkedIn. Facebook, you can join Facebook groups, and we have an alumni Facebook group set up at Animation Apprentice so that you can keep in touch. There's awn.com, Animation World Network. You should go on there, sign in, register, and make sure that they send you a weekly update of all the jobs going, because they will let you know when there are jobs available. VFXrecruit.com, Mandy.com, there are other places. You've got to make looking for work almost a full-time job. It's not quite that bad, but you do need your eyes and ears out there. Now in London, where I live, the big four in visual effects are Framestore, Cinesight, Double Negative, and MPC. Those are the biggies. But there are lots and lots and lots of smaller companies that also hire. These places all offer internships. So, if you can't get actual paid work, it is worth doing an internship if you can afford it, because it gets you in the door. And that's the key thing, is getting you in the door, and then you can start to impress these people. At Cinesight, where I've spent a lot of time, they have a 12-week internship program for animators that they call Inspire. And Anna Ford at Cinesight runs that. And I know Anna, so say you studied under me at Animation Apprentice. They also hire runners. They say it's only 6 months' work. It can often be more, but it does tend to lead to an entry-level job afterwards. So it's worth sticking with it. Of course, we'd all like to work in Hollywood. Everyone wants to work in Los Angeles or indeed at Pixar. They're great places to work. DreamWorks, Disney, wonderful places to work. I've had a really great experience working in the States on these big films. I've never worked for Pixar, but I've worked for pretty much all of the others. The big problem with working in the USA is you're going to need a green card. And that's the tricky bit. So unless you're a US citizen or unless you marry one, you're going to have to try and get one. And a green card, that is. There is a lottery. It's known as the Diversity Visa Program. So that's what you want to look at. And here's the website, www.uscis.gov. And watch out, there are an awful lot of scam sites which pretend to be official. To enter the actual official lottery is free. And any site that's charging you money is a fake. So, working in Europe, you can obviously, as a citizen of the European Union, you can work anywhere in Europe. So, if you're English, you can work in France, Spain, Germany, wherever you want to go. And one of the great benefits of the European Union, and one which is seldom appreciated. Asia, more difficult to find work out there. Wages tend to be a lot lower. But the big exception is Singapore. It's relatively easy to get a visa for Singapore. I say relatively. They only are really interested in hiring talented foreigners. But if you fall into that category, you can get a work visa. It is possible to find work in Singapore, and there are lots of good studios out there now. It's become a real hub for the area. TV commercials, lots and lots of commercial studios in London, can be very well paid. Also, another advantage of commercials is the schedules tend to be short. It doesn't take over your life, and it can be interesting. And you get to multitask. You get to do lots of different things. So I actually highly recommend working on TV commercials. Who does them? Well, there's Partisan, Passion Pictures are excellent at them, and MPC have a big commercials division as well. Also, Aardman in Bristol do lots of commercials. There are some disadvantages. Clients can be annoying. You can be basically selling a lot of crap. But it's a it can be a very interesting life, and you can get to do interesting work. And if you get to work on something like the Meerkat ads for comparethemeerkat.com, then that can be really fun character work. So there's a lot to be said for it. Who else is hiring? There's some good websites. www.britfilms.com is a useful one. And there are always companies out there that are looking for talent. So you just got to get online, find lists, send in applications, and you've got to be persistent and look hard. If you want to go into games, you're going to need artistic and technical skills. A games reel, of course, is going to look different from a normal animation reel. You want emphasis on cycles, lots of walk cycles, lots of behavior cycles, lots of human actions. If you want to go into games, make sure that you use relatively realistic characters. So don't do a walk cycle with Willy, do a walk cycle with Heavy. That's the kind of thing that's going to get you hired in the games industry. EA Games is huge. They're based down in Guildford in the UK, and the games business is growing very, very fast, much, much bigger than the movie business, which has basically been flat for about 10 years now. Games, they usually use Maya, which is a good thing. There's a lot of motion capture you're doing, but really you don't need to be afraid of motion capture, although we haven't done any of it on the course because of the technical difficulty of doing it remotely. Mocap is really you're just cleaning up curves. It's almost as if you've had an animator who's come along and done a rather bad job, and now you've got to tidy it up. So if you can animate, you can do mocap. It's really not not that difficult. Working in game studios is actually quite fun. I think animators like it. It tends to be very collaborative with artists and programmers working together in pods or groups. Of course, one thing about game animation is it's got to look good from any direction. When you're working on film or TV, you're always working to camera, whereas with games, it always needs to look good from any angle. It can be less fun on games, I think, because mocap has made it easier. Motion capture does most of the work for you. Cleaning up motion capture curves isn't as difficult, and therefore it's a bit less skilled, and therefore the pay can be a bit lower. So what do animators actually earn in London? The subject of filthy lucre. Here's a list. A junior rate is probably £75 to £100 a day, something like that. But actually, and a supervisor can get as much as this. But I would say, actually, even as I look at these numbers now, I would say these numbers probably held good a couple of years ago, and I would say that rates are probably a bit lower now. The impact of the credit crisis and also the impact of global competition has driven down wages to some degree, in the last. At the time that I'm making this, London has been losing ground to places like Canada and other lower cost producers. Now, you must get used to rejection. Very, very important. And you mustn't take it personally. You're going to get rejection letters. Or actually, you're not going to get rejection letters. You're just not going to hear back from people. That's the most common. The most common response is no response. And that sounds depressing, but it is unfortunately true. And that's why it's important to cast your net wide. And just make as many applications as you can. The most important thing, as I've said before, is your demo reel must be free of mistakes. If your demo reel has mistakes in it, you won't get hired. If your demo reel looks good and is free of mistakes, you will get hired sooner or later. It's just going to be a question of time. Now, interviews. Basically, by the time you get to interview, they're pretty much minded to hire you. That's usually the case. So really, you've just got to make sure that you go in, you don't have horns and a tail, and you don't say anything silly in the job interview. Very important that you do cut your reel to suit the company you're applying for. If you're applying for work on The Hobbit, they want dragons, right? So you're going to have dragons on your reel. Also, whenever you apply to a company, find out the kind of work that they've done. If you're applying for Blue Sky Studios, watch all of the Ice Age movies and love them. Also, find out what is the project. If you can, find out what they're hiring you for. Find out a bit about that project and love the project. Say how much you like the project, But basically, put yourself in their shoes. What are they looking for? They're looking for somebody who loves the work that they've done in the past, is really excited about the project that they're about to do, and really, really wants to work long hours, and do whatever they're told. That's what you're looking for when you're hiring. You're looking for enthusiastic people who really, really want to work on the project. Also, try and find out who's going to interview you. Who are they? What have they done? Flatter them a bit. Find out what they've worked on. You can look them up on imdb.com. Everyone's on IMDb now. And tell them how much you love their work. People like that stuff. I mean, don't lay it on too thick, but if you show appreciation for work that the person hiring you has done in the past, they will like that, guaranteed. So studios are looking for people who are talented, obviously. Does not complain. This is very, very important. Nobody likes a whiner. And hours can be long on animated films. So most studios want to know, can you hack it? Can you put up with a lot of hours? And that's unfortunately the reality of it, especially when you're in at the bottom. But that's part of the deal in this industry. So when you go to interview, obviously you always bring a copy of your CV. Just bring, even though you've already sent it in digitally, don't assume they'll have printed it out. They might well not have done. So bring in a couple of copies. Also bring in a copy of your demo reel. Again, you've probably sent it in to them. Don't assume they'll have it at the interview. They might well not. Lots of companies are dysfunctional, especially in organizational terms. But what I usually do, if I have to go in and talk to someone about my work, I just bring my laptop. And I just play my reel on the laptop. And usually everybody's fine with that. And why wouldn't they be? It makes it easy for them. Should you have a business card? The answer to this is yes. Always have a business card. And at the end of an interview, always hand out business cards. I like this little company here, moo.com. They do really good, cheap business cards. They're about 15 or 20 pounds for a pack of 50, and you get to design it yourself. And it's fun, you design your own card, throw them away when you get bored of them, get new ones. It's always good to have a card. Makes you look professional. Now, interviews, what do you not do? At an interview, never, ever, ever ask how much you're going to be paid. That sounds counterintuitive, but the truth is this will be handled by a separate department. Typically, the person who interviews you will be a creative. The person who's going to decide on your pay is going to be a human resources person. The person interviewing you probably won't even know what the money is, and they don't want to. You don't want to give the impression that that's what you're interested in. Obviously, it's what you're interested in. It's what we're all interested in. Everybody needs to be paid. We have to pay the rent, but you just don't want to say it. That comes later. Don't tell your interviewer you want to direct. When they ask you about your personal development goals, which they will, don't say that you want to direct movies. Again, I know that sounds, you probably do want to direct movies, but the thing is you're not being hired to do that. You're being hired to do grunt work. That's the brutal reality at the bottom of the heap, is you've got to get in and you're going to do long hours of toil on difficult stuff. But if you tell them you want to direct, they're going to think, oh no, we've got a dreamer who's not going to want to handle the difficult stuff. The other thing you don't want to do is don't wear a suit. I know this sounds obvious, but some people, you'd be amazed. They get up in their Sunday best and they go in. Your visual effects, animation, just wear what you normally wear. Don't look scruffy. Obviously, don't have t-shirts with obscenities on them. Try and look tidy, but suits are not necessary. And once you're hired, when you actually get to your job, it's incredibly important to. This is my checklist for first day at work. Number one, learn everybody's name. And it's harder than it sounds. You go to a company like Cinesight or Framestore. There are hundreds of people in the building. Make it your job to learn everybody's name and remember them. And you will find that it is much easier to stay in an organization where people like you. And people like you if you remember their name. Very, very important. And try and figure out a system so that you can remember everybody's name. Secondly, love the project you're working on. Don't moan about it. There may be problems with the project. There usually are. There are almost always management problems. But nobody likes a complainer. So make sure that you love the work and maintain a positive attitude. That's what most companies are looking for. And the moaners tend to be first out the door. So that's a general jog through the business of getting hired, job opportunities, and what to do how to find them, and what to do when you get there. It's just an introduction, but hopefully there's some wisdom in there accumulated over the years. And good luck.